In this video, we're going to be looking at the novel Catch-22, and we'll put a typical paperback version up against the hardcover edition from the Folio Society. Joseph Heller's most famous novel, Catch-22, was first published in 1961. It's a complex satire set in World War II and follows a number of American soldiers who are flying bombing missions from a small island off the coast of Italy. The novel is well known for its title and the ubiquitous phrase it coined. A catch-22 is a problem that has no solution due to a series of illogical rules and regulations, and this novel is full of characters, situations, and dialogue that simultaneously create and grapple with these impossible and often dangerous conditions. Catch-22 is pretty funny, especially for a book about war, but that's not all it is. It isn't just a satire of military hierarchy and its often absurd logic. It extends its send-up to include the maddening bureaucracy of any system that's dominated by administration and authority. Basically, if you've ever had a job of any kind, even if it wasn't serving as a soldier in a time of conflict, the themes of this novel will still hit really close to home. The book recently had a new spike of popularity with the release of the 2019 Hulu miniseries from George Clooney. They did good work with this adaptation. They had to chop a few of the characters and rework some details, but for the most part, the show stayed faithful to the spirit of the novel. There's a huge cast of characters in this book, maybe too many, and some of the scenes are pretty silly in terms of their slapstick comedy. But the best humor in the novel has a dark and ironic twist. Yet the greatest strength of Catch-22, at least to me, isn't the laughs, but the structure. This is a fragmented narrative that works kind of like the best Quentin Tarantino films. Scenes that are initially jarring, or seem like a bunch of disconnected little moments, are returned to later on and fleshed out with more context. While they feel familiar and might even be repetitive, Heller rewards the attentive reader by having form echo function. He scrambles our senses and makes us feel as confused and crazy as the characters, but by the end, the fragments lock into place and we can peer through the madness and get to the truths that he wants to tell. I first encountered this novel the way many people do, through an edition just like this. It's the Simon & Schuster trade version. This particular copy is from 2010, and it features a color flip of the original blue cover with the red soldier. It is printed on a thick textured paper, and features a printed medallion signaling the 50th anniversary of the text. I now recognize that these Simon & Schuster editions offer great value. They really pack in the extras. This one features an introduction by novelist Christopher Buckley, who writes about the novel's impact and tells the story of how it came to be, while including brief anecdotes of Buckley's own friendship with Joseph Heller. In the back matter, there's an impressive 90 pages of extras, including archival images and more writing from Heller, with pieces by others like Norman Mailer and Anthony Burgess about the legacy of the text. Despite the fantastic value offered by all this bonus material in the Simon & Schuster edition, when I saw the design of the Folio Society version, I knew I had to upgrade. So let's do this. And here we have Catch-22 from the Folio Society. This version was originally released in 2004 and is presented in a plain blue slipcase. It features a fantastic cover design by Neil Packer. The front is adorned with the same type of mission marks painted near the cockpit of bombing aircraft. There's room for 42 of them, the same number of chapters in the book. Some of the yellow bombs have been replaced with imagery from the novel in white: a Zippo lighter, a bottle of booze, prostitutes, a tomato. The book is wrapped in khaki cloth, and on the back there's a great silhouette image of a bomber delivering its payload. On the spine, we note the red, white, and blue motif, with the title, the star insignia, and the author. Later printings have the author's name moved up closer to the star, with the Folio logo down at the bottom of the spine. The binding is brilliantly finished with a red, white, and blue headband. When we crack the book open, we see these fantastic illustrated end papers in a medium stock. Neil Packer has provided drawings of a number of World War II aircraft. Rather than presenting them as technical drawings, he gives some of them a bend or characterizes them with exaggerated foreshortening. The book is printed on Caxton wove paper, and it's smooth and more sterile white rather than the warmer cream colors I've noticed in other Folio editions. Because this is such a long read, this high degree of contrast and precision from the paper here makes the big job a lot easier on the eyes. When we bring back the Simon & Schuster edition for a brief side-by-side, we can see that the Folio version is much bigger. The font size isn't necessarily larger, yet the printing of the Folio edition is much more crisp and substantially easier on the eyes, perhaps aided by the generous margins and great spacing, or by the whiteness of the paper. This edition features some decent front matter. There's a lengthy introduction from academic Malcolm Bradbury. He considers the war novel as a form, and makes the argument for Catch-22 being one of the best about World War II. He also considers some of the early critical reception of the novel, then shares his own analysis of it, focusing on the dark comedy and the curious role of doubling in the novel. Then we get Joseph Heller's 1994 preface to his own novel, which can be found in the back matter of the Simon & Schuster version too. Neil Packer provides 9 interior illustrations. His work is familiar to Folio fans from his Claudius novels or the recent Divine Comedy limited edition. Packer's work in Catch-22 is informed by 1940s propaganda, as he pulls elements from pinups and posters for the work here. He also appropriately employs surrealist elements, which fit perfectly as the novel itself is often described as surreal. The art is presented on a smooth and slightly glossy stock that's a little bit thicker than the text pages. The images usually land within a few pages of the text they coincide with. Now let's take a detailed look at the artwork. The first illustration, the frontispiece, is a collage of 3 images. We've got the title along the top in the same style as the spine. The primary image depicts aircraft in action around the central figure of a woman posing in a red swimsuit as she rides a bomb stamped with the M&M Enterprises logo. In the smaller image to the left, we see structures burning after they've been bombed, and on the right, we see a military map. The second image is based on an anatomy poster. It says "Picture my liver" in large lettering along the top, and the red, green, and orange background colors add to the garish feel. The numbered legend is absurd, with names of Italian locations, famous names from literature, random foods including chocolate milk, and of the internal organs, only the liver is properly labeled. It reminds me of the children's game Operation. The third image looks like something from an atlas, or like the old posters that used to hang in social studies classrooms, but it actually documents the complex trade routes of Milo's syndicate, which plays a prominent role in the narrative. I love the detail of the B-25 spilling the arrows out of its damaged side. These arrows read, "Here was God's plenty." The arrows on the map itself document the specific goods being traded by the syndicate, with many of them converging on the island of Pianosa. Next, we have my favorite of the bunch, a dynamic image of Yossarian's crew on a bombing run to Bologna. Yossarian, the bombardier, and Arfi, the navigator, are in the nose as the plane twists and turns to avoid the artillery fire. The inversion adds to the chaos of the scene, which is dominated by a total failure of communication, while Arfi remains calm and engages in casual conversation between pulls from his pipe. The fifth illustration is also made up of 3 separate images, and it's the scene when the soldiers arrive at a bordello. All the details from the scene are here, including the old man in the blue chair at the center of the room, and the 3 converging hallways. Above that, we see 2 empty bedrooms with some great wallpaper and carpet details, and the border that divides them from the bottom image allows us to see through the floorboards. The figure in the foreground is especially striking due to her expression and the extreme foreshortening used in her representation. The 6th image is another piece based on 1940s propaganda, with Milo at the center looking very heroic in his pose. He's sending out his fleets of planes with prices, product names, and moral sayings trailing behind them on banners. I love the color choices here with the orange and pink sky juxtaposed against the green grass and water below. The next image is a depiction of one of the scenes that hit me hardest. The death of Kid Sampson is gruesome in the book, but here Mr. Packer represents it symbolically by featuring the moment just before the tragedy, as McWatt's plane approaches and Kid Sampson waves energetically. His gesture echoes the motion of the prop, almost becoming part of it. Below him, those who were skinny dipping at the time are depicted as dead and torn up, with their floating remains caught in fishing nets. This metaphorically suggests how the event maims and traps them. The 8th illustration is made up of 2 separate images. We have Nately's girl, along with the moments right before Dobbs collides with Nately's aircraft, killing all on board. The oranges and the pinks in the top pinup style image are great, but I really love the fantastic details in the cockpit and the subtle text at the bottom of this image that coincides with the language Heller used. Dobbs zigged when he should have zagged. The 9th and final image is one of the best. It depicts Orr in the imagination of Yossarian, or the chaplain, who find great hope in the image of Orr paddling with his tiny blue paddle all the way to freedom. Packer has the damaged fuselage of many planes from many countries sticking up from the water, and they're reflected by the water, as is the sky. This gives everything a surreal, dreamlike quality, and the figure could just as easily be paddling through the clouds as he paddles through the water. I'm happy with this edition of Catch-22 due to its masterful design courtesy of Mr. Neil Packer and the Folio Society. I happen to have the first print here, but there have been multiple printings over the years. It used to be rather easy to snag a used copy at a good price, but since it recently sold out on Folio's website, I've seen the prices steadily creep up on the secondary market. Still, there are lots of them out there, so if you're patient and diligent, I'm sure you can get yourself one at a fair price. As for my paperback edition, I like all the extras they've packed into it, but I'm still ultimately moving it to the Box of Doom, so I can make more room for more new books. Yossarian wins. As always, thanks for watching, and if you'd like more, keep an eye out for new content, or circle back to earlier videos in this series.